What's up, everybody? This is Mario, and I'm back with another episode of Endurify. And the past few episodes, I've been talking about that unfortunate circumstance of you getting injured as an endurance athlete. So the more that you get into endurance athletics and endurance events, and the longer your distances are, and the longer that you stay in this sport, the more likely it is that you're going to deal with an injury. And over time, being an endurance athlete becomes a big part of your identity. And so when you get injured, it's really hard to deal with that. So these past couple of days, I've been talking about how can we best deal with injuries as athletes, and what are some of the strategies behind that I'm learning from the brave athlete. And what we've learned so far is that the way that your brain deals with injuries happens through a process called cognitive appraisal. And it's kind of a two-step process. There's a primary and a secondary. And the primary process is thoughts and feelings about the injury itself. And then the secondary process is thoughts and feelings about your ability to deal with the rehab and recovery. And in yesterday's episode, we talked about the primary appraisal process and the thoughts and feelings about the injury. And we talked about trying to make sure that you're focused on fact-finding behavior, making sure that you're seeking out a medical diagnosis so that you aren't catastrophizing and jumping to the worst case scenarios. And if you're the type of person or the type of athlete that doesn't cope well with injury, it's likely that you have some gremlins or problems with your ability to handle the rehab and recovery. And that's what I want to talk about next. And these are just maybe 4 or 5 different gremlins, which are what the authors of The Brave Athlete use. And they're really just kind of problems that you should be aware of. And once I talk about the problems, also going to offer up some strategies to prevent that from happening. So this is all about your ability to handle and come to terms with your need to rest and recover and rehab your injuries. So the first potential gremlin that you could have is becoming what they call is a passive patient. And when somebody gets injured and they work with athletes that are injured, they recognize that there are 3 types of athletes with how they approach recovery. The first is passive. This is where you're unfocused, you're apathetic, you're unmotivated to get better. And these are the ones that are just the most likely to complain and moan about the injuries and about what they have to do, but they're the least likely ones to deal with it. The next is the active athlete. And this is somebody who is proactive about learning about the injury, why they got it, and how to recover, and how to prevent it from happening again. And according to the authors, most people fall into this group. And then the third group that they mention is the overachiever. And this is somebody who's doing all of those things that I mentioned before. They're learning about the injury, why they got it. They're curious how to recover and how to prevent it from happening again. But they take it to the next level, and they're constantly reading and learning and kind of obsessing over new info about the injury and rehab. And they're kind of the ones that are asking, what else can I do? So let's say you're dealing with an injury right now, or maybe you've been injured in the past. Which of those 3 groups are you? Are you passive? Are you active? Or are you an overachiever? So that's kind of the first question. And once you understand where you fall into that group, one potential solution that they offer up to make sure that you're in that kind of active group is to give yourself rehab homework. So it can be as simple as just setting 30 minutes a day to try and learn more about your injury. And it's not just going to Dr. Google and, finding all of this maybe unscientific or non-scientific information. What you can do during that 30 minutes is write down questions to ask your doctor, start to think about how to find a good specialist. You can ask people on Facebook, and you can research what other athletes have done to recover from a similar injury. So that is the first problem, It's being a passive patient, and there's your first solution. So let's go on to the next gremlin or problem. And this is where you hold on to negative emotions. And I think it's very normal to experience negative emotions during an injury. But the problem is when that drags on even past the time that your body heals. That's where it becomes unhealthy. And so one of the best strategies that the authors recommend here is after you are injured, you can encourage a mourning period. Okay. This is where you can give yourself maybe 2 to 7 days, depending on the injury. If it's more severe, then that's going to be longer, closer to the 7 days. If it's less serious, can be closer to 2 or 3. And after that, you have to switch to a positive mindset. So this is an opportunity to give yourself space to experience those negative emotions. But then once that mourning period is up, you have to switch to a positive attitude. And there's a couple of evidence-based ways to switch to that positive attitude that they talked about. And the first is gratefulness training. This is one thing that I practice daily. It's something that I've talked about on the podcast. And simply just writing down 3 things you are grateful for 3 weeks straight is known to help initiate and sustain a positive mood, according to science. And so that's the first one that they recommend. Now, the next one is mindfulness training. And this is, again, something that I've talked about on the podcast, focusing on your breath for 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes a day can be a great way to regulate your stress, reduce your stress, and manage those emotions that you're having. So that's the second gremlin, is holding on to negative emotions. So now the third one, this is failing to set aggressive fitness goals during rehab. So a lot of athletes think that rehab or recovery is a time to put your kind of athletic identity on hold or put that on the back burner. It's like, oh, since I'm injured, I'm no longer an athlete, and I'm just going to, kind of coast through this and let my body heal. And a lot of people feel a loss of identity because of this. So if you get so invested in triathlons or marathons or trail runs or whatever it is for you, that becomes such a big part of your identity that when you get injured, that can be kind of like a devastating blow to your identity. But what if you were to ask the opposite? What if you were to flip it and say, how would an athlete attack this recovery? Or how would I, as the best version of myself as an athlete, attack this recovery? And that's what the authors recommend. Is a better approach is to keep focusing on your athletic identity and to use this as an opportunity to work on areas that don't get a lot of attention, maybe when you are healthy and things are going well. So a potential solution here is to hone in on a current weakness, a limitation, or something that you've always wanted to get better at that doesn't impact your injury. So if maybe you get injured as an athlete or as a runner in triathlons, and one of your weakest areas is the swim, maybe this is a good opportunity for you to focus on your swimming form, your technique, your exercises there to give your legs time to heal, while also improving one of your weaker areas. And thus, when you come back, you'll be an even better triathlete than you were before. So this is kind of that next gremlin is, just failing to set those aggressive fitness goals during rehab. So the next one, gremlin number 4, problem number 4 is dealing with symptom anxiety and a fear of re-injury. And this is one that I can definitely relate to. And it's very common for a lot of athletes. And this is where that thought of re-injury is always in the back of your mind. Even as you're coming back, even though, maybe the doctor says that you're healthy or you feel better, that thought of, oh my gosh, what if this happens again, is always in the back of your mind. And because of that, you become hyper vigilant on the problem area, on that injury. And this is where, for me, when I've injured my knee and I come back and I either go for a run or I go for a bike, every single time kind of my knee hits the ground, I'm focused on, oh, what is that pain? What's that tightness, on the front of my knee or on the back of my knee? And it's like you're so hyper vigilant and you're so focused on that problem area that you obsessively focus on it. And this can be problematic. And the authors talk about this, and they ask a simple question to help you understand if this is something that you're dealing with. And they just say, on a scale of 1 to 10, and during training sessions, how often do you think about injury or try to detect symptoms of pain, soreness, or tightness returning? So on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 is not at all, 10 is, constantly. If you are an 8 or a 9, then you're in this hypervigilant phase. And anywhere in the 3 to 7 range is normal. So if you're constantly thinking about that problem area and really focused on it, then that is actually a problem, and you want to try and stop doing that. And so potential solutions for that they recommend is, one, just try and be aware of when you do that, because once you're aware, you can try and redirect your attention. But another is, rather than being so focused on the small area of the actual injury, what you can do is you can focus on the external. So focus on, if you're going for a run, focus on the trees or the water or the clouds or, other objects around you. And that gives your brain kind of a task, and it gives your brain something to focus on so that you're not so hyper focused on maybe your foot or your knee or your hip or whatever that problem area is. You can also try and distract yourself by listening to music or an audiobook. Whatever that is for you, you're just trying to give your brain a simple task so that it's focused on something else and it's not focused on that one problem area. Now, the last gremlin or potential problem in rehab and recovery is failing to do things that make you feel good. So think about the last time that you were maybe just down in the dumps, right? What is something that made you feel good outside of food, right? Or something that's unhealthy for you. What is that thing for you? For a lot of athletes, this can be getting a massage. And one of the best, the authors view a massage as one of the best rewards for kind of an injured body and a tired mind. And they shared some science that after a massage, your dopamine levels are up 31%, serotonin is up 28%, and your stress hormone of cortisol drops significantly. So if you're down in the dumps, go and get a massage if you can. So those are the 5 gremlins that could be plaguing you in the secondary kind of appraisal process, and that's in your ability to understand and come to terms with what needs to happen in your rehab and your recovery. So again, like I said yesterday, I hope that this isn't relevant for you because that means that you're healthy. But like I said, there's going to be a time when you're going to, after you've built up a habit, you've built up your mileage, you're going to deal with an injury. And it's important to have these strategies in the back of your mind and in the top of your mind so that you can apply them whenever that situation arises. So that's what I have for you today. I hope that served you. I hope that was helpful, and I hope you all have an amazing day.